Hey everybody, welcome to Leading Thriving Cities. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners. This is our show where we shine a spotlight on leadership in public service, and we have deep conversations about sustainability and how we create a thriving future for our cities. Today's guest is Gina Nash. She has been the city manager of the city of Sachse for almost 10 years now. And listen, this is an incredible conversation. Gina really opens up and we dive deep into how the really challenging times in our lives affect us as leaders and city managers. And we dive deep in what it means to process grief when you're leading an entire city. There is so much wisdom in this, and there's just so much for us to all understand about how we all show up and the difference that it makes. I'll tell you, over the last few years, Gina has been doing the work, and she has some incredible insight for all of us. You're going to love today's episode of Leading Thriving Cities. Gina, thank you for doing this. We've been looking forward to this for a really long time, and we've tried multiple times, and we're finally here. So
the stars have aligned.
The stars have aligned. And you and I have worked together for a few years now, so that's why I'm really excited about this, because, you know, we have our standard questions, but I have a feeling we can go down a lot of rabbit holes, and I'll know if you're telling me the truth.
Yeah,
so
that is true.
It'll work out well. So, you know, part of why we do this project, and I think why you even listen to a lot of the episodes, is because everybody in public service, we are really nerdy about public service. Yeah. But part of it is we want the public to understand what y'all do better, to really understand the sacred work that y'all take on every day. What is it you really wish people understood about being a city manager?
I think the biggest thing that a lot of people don't understand is everything is with the long game in mind. I mean, what I have to be thinking about every decision that's made, it's not just about today or next week or next month. I mean, I'm thinking 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, every decision. And a lot of times when I'm, thinking about what we want to do long-term, say with the employee pay plan, I have to think about how that affects us forever. Same with a development. A developer's like, well, I want to do this. And I say to them, well, but you're here to get your project done and get out.
Yeah.
I got to think about what this is going to look like in 20 years, 30 years.
I still got to pay for these streets in 3 decades.
Absolutely. And so I always tell them I'm playing the long game. Our interests are competing on this. And so
is there kind of a loneliness that comes with that? Because when I think about the structure as you're describing this, you've got staff who does think long-term in a lot of ways, but not as long-term. They can get real focused on, well, here's my task list for today, and here they can get short-term focused. You've got council that, again, can think long-term, but a lot of council can get locked into, I got a 3-year term, so I'm thinking about the next 3 years. And so that doesn't mean they all do that, but it can happen.
Sure.
And are city managers kind of uniquely on this island of you are thinking 3 decades ahead and almost nobody else is aligned with that fully?
Absolutely. And I think especially when it comes to us as humans, we want what we want in the moment.
Yes.
It's natural. Or we're just thinking about, like I said, a project that's going to be happening in the next month.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but let's play that out. That's a phrase I use a lot with staff when we talk about, okay, well, we need to do this and we need to do this and this. And I say, okay, but let's play out what happens after that's done.
Yeah.
And let's talk about what happens after that and what happens after that. And a lot of times that's where the organic conversation comes of, maybe I should have thought this through kind of differently, because these things are going to align in a way where, again, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, this isn't going to be where we want to be or what we want it to look like. And so I think that's sometimes the hardest part, because people will walk away from this and go, a situation where we're working through something and say, oh, well, she doesn't care. She doesn't,
Yeah.
And it's because I'm trying to think of all of it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of it for 31,000 people too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying not to just pick it for this group of people or these few people. I'm trying to say what's going to be the best for everybody. And sometimes that doesn't feel good to a segment of people or a couple of people. And, but that's what I'm here to do. It is, as you pointed out, it is sacred work, but it's also much higher level visionary kind of thinking in terms of, I got to try to think of all those pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Well, and when we talk about the idea of leadership health, one of the elements is spiritual health. And the question we use there is, are you seeing purpose and impact in your daily life and leadership? But when we talk about spiritual health, what we're really saying is, do you see the big picture? And it occurs to me as you're saying this, how much spiritual health really matters for city managers. because you have to see the big picture and not just see it, but hold on to it. And I think it's a hard thing to hold on to because it's kind of ethereal. It's big. It's in the clouds. It's this may happen, but there's not a lot of guarantees. Whereas on the ground, there's gravity there because we got tasks and we got fires and things that make us feel like we matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much easier to get mired in that and not actually look and go, you know what, 30, 40 years from now, this is going to count. And so that takes a lot of spiritual health, doesn't it?
It does, because you go home and, it's so funny. My husband will say, well, what'd you do today? And some days I go, well, I don't know. And what I mean by that is I don't know if this thing I'm working on, what it's going to look like in the end. It's very rare and wonderful for city managers when we get to see something through completely.
Yes.
And there are so many times when I get that moment,
Mm-hmm.
And I've been city manager in Sachse for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a decade next week.
Which in and of itself is a rarity, by the way. I mean, 3 to 5 years is the average term for a city manager. So
it's
you're already
a
twice that. Yeah.
It's a miracle.
It really is.
But I've had some moments in Sachse where we finished something
Mm-hmm.
and I've been able to stand on that ground and I've cried.
Yeah.
Just because I knew everything that it took to get to that point. That conversation, that napkin flipped over with something drawn on it, the driving a gator out onto some property and be looking and going, but we could do this and this is going to happen and that could happen. It's sitting in negotiations with developers where they're fighting with you tooth and nail, saying that's never going to happen. You're not going to get this from us. It's walking out of rooms going, I hope I did the right thing by telling them no.
Yeah.
It's all of that stuff. And when you actually get to see the end of something like that, it's incredible. And you think of all the employees that were involved in that, all the elected officials that made brave decisions when people were standing at a podium saying, I don't want you to do this, but 29,999 people wanted it, but didn't come to the meeting. It's all of that. That's when I look at the project, that's what I see. I see those faces. I see, all of those meetings, all of those hard decisions culminate. And
often sleepless nights.
Definitely. And it's just it's an incredible feeling.
Yeah.
It is. And there's those moments that I try to hang on to.
Mm-hmm.
When we're in the thick of it and it's not fun, to say, but we can do great things.
Mm-hmm.
Great things aren't fast.
Yeah.
They take time.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful when we get to
You kind of have to have an
through.
Inherent patience to be in public service.
And I am not patient.
I was about to say, which is, personality-wise, not your gift.
No, it is not my gift. It is not.
Let me ask you this. When you say what was the phrase, let's play this out? Is that what you said?
Yep.
As you're having that conversation more and more consistently, are you seeing your team start to preemptively think that way, to start to consider the big picture more often?
You do. And it's funny because my team, and we've built the team over 10 years. I've got some really young folks and I have some long tenured folks.
Yes.
And it's very interesting.
I like how you phrase that, young and long tenured.
Yes, because I'm, as you can
You are
see,
one of the
I'm
long-tenured
long
folks.
tenured. I'm not old. As you can see, even in the longer tenured ones, there are times that they see that they have that moment, that aha moment, and bringing people along and getting them there. Because just like with anything, as you know, in the work you do and the coaching you do, I've been the victim of this. Where
I thought you were going to say you've been the victim of my coaching.
I have. Where those moments where you're all you're doing, and just like I do as a city manager, you're just holding a light up in a forest, and you're just guiding. And you're showing me something over here and I have to see it. And that's where true change occurs in people.
Yeah.
And on the team is when they see it. Me telling them isn't going to cause any fundamental change in a person. A person has to be able to see it for themselves and have the moment. And that's when I love seeing the team thrive, is when they have the moments, when they say the things that I'm thinking and they're coming to these conclusions.
Yeah.
Then I see that's where we have lasting change. That's where we see lasting growth. It's incredible.
Well, and we talk all the time about how everything in leadership comes back to marriage and parenting.
Amen.
And what you're describing is parenting, right?
It is.
It is, I'm going to invest. I'm going to ask questions, shine the light in the forest. And my hope is that someday all those little seeds I'm planting start to sprout.
Yeah.
That you start to see those signs. And when you're thinking about these are adults we're talking about, but the reality is at the end of the day, we're all scared toddlers.
Absolutely.
And so we grow the same way, and
Mhm.
we need people to invest in us, and hopefully those seeds start to grow. But it's long term, and you're describing projects and how much patience they require. People are no different. In fact, they require a lot more patience,
A
don't they?
lot more patience because they're
Yeah.
not linear.
Yeah.
As humans, that's not how growth happens.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a graphic once of, how I think change is gonna happen, and it's this line,
Yes.
and then how it really happens, and it's these squiggles. It's forward,
Yeah.
sideways, back, forward, back,
Yeah.
but incrementally,
Yeah.
it's like how runners think, it's about my personal best. It's about, did I do better than last time? Did I do better than yesterday? And not being, but I want to be like him or her or that. That's not how we have to gauge our lives. It's where am I and how am I doing better than I was before?
Yeah. And really, I think we've talked about this idea of this book called The Gap and the Gain. And when you're in the gap, you're always comparing yourself to some ideal future, and you're never going to measure up. And you're always, everything that happens is stopping you from getting there. When you're in the gain, you're always looking back and going, man, look where we've come from. Look at how far we've advanced. And that provides energy to keep you advancing. And it speaks to this idea of constant improvement is what you're describing, of this, we are always trying to get better. And interestingly, I was in a city the other day and we were talking about values. And one of the values somebody out there, one of the definitions somebody threw out there was this idea that had the words constant improvement in it. And in public service, I think there's a very high level of burnout. And somebody raised their hand and said, like, that sounds great. That sounds exhausting. And so this idea of we're always improving and getting better, that's what I think a lot of what burnout robs us from is that capacity for advancement and growth. And y'all have had seasons, I'm guessing, throughout your 10 years there where burnout was a huge factor in everything you did, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I would say recently. We just went through a challenging election in Sachse, and for a variety of reasons, but it really started, that election really started last fall.
Yeah.
And, the build up to May. And there's just been a lot going on in the organization, all the things we're trying to do, the projects, the good work and all that. And then you have sort of this simmer of politics. And a lot of it, and many city managers, I'm sure, have said to you, it's federal, things happening at the federal level, things happening at the state level, just generally where people are politically in this country, regardless of what side you're on.
Yeah.
And we're seeing trickles of that into local government.
Yes.
And that is putting pressure on our good people.
Yeah.
And it's the way we're communicated to now, the way people feel freely to say things that frankly aren't very nice.
Yeah.
The delivery is terrible. There's a way to deliver a message of being unhappy, but we seem to have lost a lot of decorum and just civility. And that's taken a toll on my team. And as you know, we've been working on leadership foundations over the last year with my team. And, we wrapped up a week ago and sat in those rooms and had conversations with my team, and they're tired.
Yes.
They're very tired.
Yeah.
And even the ones that have got it all going on, they've got it all together. Not a single person in that room was like, I'm fine, everything's great. Everybody was like, I'm burned out. And saying, you know what, guys, here are some things we need to start talking about that.
Yes.
Everyone needs to start taking vacations. I need to see everybody's on the calendar. We've got to start recharging our batteries and addressing it in the ways that we need to address it, because we're about to enter the busiest season of the year, the budget. So let's recharge. Let's spend time with our families, our friends, whatever gives us peace and joy. Let's do it. And let's come back and let's look at what's on our plate, and let's try to shuffle things and make sure that we're balancing that. Because I know I wanted to keep charging ahead on some things, as you and I talked about. And I need to exercise some patience on some of that.
Well, it's interestingly, y'all been doing incredible work. And the fact that you were even able to have that conversation, Because the way it would go in most places is everybody shows up trying to pretend they're okay because that's what strength looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, yeah, no, we got this. Let's go. Let's run through the wall. And you and I might be the most Gen Xers to ever Gen X.
Harder,
and
faster,
so we
stronger,
love
man.
a good wall to run through. And I think it's interesting that my career is now, despite being that at my core, my career is how do we slow down? How do we stop running through the walls? Is there a better way? And I'm getting a lot of traction there. And I think, interestingly, because you are that same kind of person, you are probably the perfect person to lead that conversation and lead that turnaround, because you can raise your hand and say, if I can do this, there's no excuse for anybody.
Anybody can do it. Oh, absolutely.
Because if you can stop from running through the wall, because we've been taught that's what success is.
I'm a recovering sprinter. I mean, not every day. I'm trying to just slow it down.
Well, that's what we talked about yesterday is we've been sprinting a marathon. And so the ability to have these conversations and then say, okay, now what intentional action are we going to take? And that's the whole goal, is you have this toolbox of how do we lead ourselves? But then we're going to talk about how we're doing all the time, not just what are we doing, but how are we doing it? Now, what's our next intentional step?
Absolutely.
And those are amazing conversations for y'all to have. And it's interesting because it doesn't mean burnout ever goes away.
No.
It means we know how to deal with it when it shows up.
We identify it and we address it.
Yeah.
We don't just keep pushing.
Yeah. Something you brought up there that I think is an interesting rhythm for cities specifically is the amount of anxiety elections create. They create a ton of fear with the staff.
Absolutely.
And I don't think people are fully aware of that. They don't understand. Like, your average company is not sitting there every time there's a municipal election, everybody freaked out, right? And yet that happens. And what I think, I really wish we could chart people's capacity in real time, because I think you would see this normal high level of productivity and capacity, and it just drops because of that fear. Because when you introduce the fear in the system, it's tough. Yeah. And you kind of mentioned at the high level, at federal level, we're seeing a lot of this lack of decorum. There was a day when we could be Republicans and Democrats and still treat each other with respect and believe in each other, that we had good hearts, right? And that's kind of trickled down to the state level. State looks exactly like federal at this point. How do we, and I don't know if you'll have an answer to this because I think it's a big question, how do we, from the ground up, say, okay, there's all this poison coming down through the system. Can we, from the ground up, generate enough optimism and goodness and belief and trust to come up through the system? Is that even possible?
I think it's a lot of intentionality. It is a lot of spending time talking to my team about the sacred work, the good work, and how it matters. And I always say there's no Republican or Democratic way to flush your toilet. There's just not.
I guarantee you there's some crazies on the internet that will argue with you about that.
But I always remind them, we are here to do the work that is needed and matters and affects everybody every day. We're going to fill those potholes. We're going to put that stop sign back up. We're going to check your book out to you.
Yeah.
We're going to make sure that your park is mowed. We're going to do those good things that you can see every day. And we're going to focus on that. And when people want to introduce other thoughts about that, that have a political bent to them, that's not where we're going, guys. Let's stay the course and let's keep doing the good work that we're doing.
Yeah.
And I've always said, if it ever became partisan at the local level for city councils, I'm out. Yeah. I'm retired. Yeah. It's just the beauty of what we do in local government. Yeah. It doesn't matter about the politics.
Yes.
I know the political leanings of every one of my city council members. I do. But we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
We talk about parks. We talk about the summer concert series. We talk about which roads we're going to put on a bond. These are things that are wanted in the community or needed in the community, and it's that. And I've been extremely blessed in my community that we've been able to stick to that.
Yes.
But I do remind councils during elections, the staff is anxious.
Yeah.
They are anxious because their lives change if the council changes. That means that the vision can change and the direction we've been going could be different. And you say, well, but that's policy and you're just here to implement whatever those policies are. Yes, but we're humans.
And we're making change.
And sometimes you're going to have people that want to drain the swamp. and they don't like what's going on in the government. And they say we're wasting money and we're doing all these terrible things. That can be scary to people.
Yeah.
Because what does that mean for my job?
Yeah.
Not me personally. I guess I'm the one most affected, but for my folks, that what does that mean for us? Or is this program going to get cut? Is this thing going to happen? And they do have an opinion about it. They do have a feeling. Yeah. This is a vocation. Being in local government is a vocation.
Yeah.
We're not doing it to get rich. We do it because we have pride about it, because we believe in it. And if someone comes in and says, well, I don't believe in those things, that's hard.
Yeah.
And that's maybe not somewhere somebody wants to be.
Yeah.
So
there's so much either stability or chaos that councils can sow. And I think what y'all have, interestingly, knowing your council the way I do, for the most part, they all have a heart for Sachse.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And I think that's the key, is they don't have a heart for a political party or political leaning so much as they have a heart for the city and the citizens.
They love our community.
Yes.
And it shows.
Yeah.
And all of them have a little bit different bent on that.
Absolutely.
Some of them are more passionate about parks or animals, or there's all sorts of things. The mayor's passionate about everything, but he just loves Sachse. He is very passionate about our community.
If anybody would ever have a Sachse tattoo, it could be him.
Yes. I cannot imagine him having a tattoo, but yes. But I agree with you. It is, they are all so passionate and so much heart about our city. They care so much. I've never worked in a city with councils with such a good heart for their community. It's important to them. And I know they lose sleep over our city. And I find comfort in that they care that much. And it helps me want to do what I do.
Yes.
Because we have their support.
Yes.
Which is so important.
Yeah. I think as we're having this conversation, I'm starting to see, how do you combat that poison coming into the system? I think a lot of it is with heart. It's with hope. It's with truth. It's with the courage to take that heart before something, have really hard conversations, and not just be against something.
Yes.
And I think that's where a lot of that poison, the reason it's so toxic, is it's all about, what am I against, not what am I for? And when we're for the good of all, I think there is something righteous about that.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it goes back to when you talked about, burnout. I think it is why it is so important for city managers to take care of themselves and manage their burnout. We're all going to get burned out in city management. You can't love this profession and be good at it and not have a moment of burnout.
Yeah.
It isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Because it's the fire inside you. You lose sleep over it. It is it's in the fabric of how I am devised. But we've got to take care of ourselves, and we have to manage the burnout.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier about, the Gen X, and as I always say, harder, faster, stronger, that is not sustainable. And what happens is the employees see it. My team sees it. And I think that's where I really needed to change my journey. And in working with you and doing some really, really hard soul searching over the last couple of years about my burnout and how to get out of the funnel cloud, and how was I going to make some changes so I could be that person, not the perfect person that I always think I'm supposed to be, but be a person who's authentic, a person who's vulnerable, but a person who takes care of myself so I can come in and I can inspire my team. I can be excited again. I can come in and be like, I have a new idea. And they're all like, oh gosh, okay. But they see my excitement and my joy instead of me just trying to get out of bed and get the things done and go to bed and lather, rinse, repeat. And I never truly valued self-care until I realized the effect it was having on the organization.
Yeah.
It's not okay. It's not okay to not be okay for long stretches of time. You have to figure it out, and you have to do the work and see some ugly parts of yourself, or see some things that make you sad and deal with your sadness. Yeah. It's not easy, but you really have to figure out how to move past it. And it's been an interesting journey the last couple years.
Is the last couple years one of those bigger kind of internal challenges you've had to overcome in your career? That journey to sit with the pain and sit and deal with things and understand how you show up affects others so deeply.
Oh, I came to Sachse and I was so excited 10 years ago. This was the pinnacle. I wanted to be a city manager. And this was a city that had been kind of on my short list of cities I had been watching.
Mm-hmm.
And, one that I really knew, I was like, oh, this would be the best place for me, for my family. This is going to knock it out of the park. And I was on, cloud nine, and I was on fire, and we were going to get things done. And we were going so fast.
And you're an Enneagram 8 who's going to take that fire and turn that directly into fuel.
Oh, it was like a blowtorch. Are you kidding? I was going crazy. And God had other plans.
He said, slow down.
He said, hang on a second.
Yeah.
And within my first year, my dad died. And it was fast. He had Parkinson's, but it sped up really fast. And it was hard to watch. It's hard to watch anybody. My dad was my hero, was my mentor. I always call him, he was the Mickey to my Rocky,
You referenced his conversations a lot.
Yeah. And everybody knows all of my dad's isms, at the office. He always had these little phrases. And I was so grateful that he got to see me become a city manager. And I was grateful to have that first 9 months, because I used to call my dad every morning on the way to work. And I loved having that sliver of time that I got with him before everything happened. And he ended up going on hospice and passing away. And I remember saying to him before I had to leave, my parents lived in Tennessee at the time, and I had to get back to work. And I said, Dad, I love you, and I want to thank you for everything. And please don't die on my 1-year anniversary of being with Sachse. You're going to make it weird, because I really want that day to be that day. And God love him, he died the day after. He did. He wanted his own day, if we're
By the way,
honest.
I love the picture into y'all's relationship, that's the thing you say to him as you walk out.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
He and I had an interesting relationship. We were always very blunt.
I love that.
But that sent me into a tailspin. Him passing away. I was being brave for everyone. My poor mother, who the lights were on and no one was home. My brothers had various struggles with it. It was hard. My father was an enigma. He was larger than life. And I had to keep it together to get through it, to get my kids through it. I wasn't dealing with it, Chad. I just kept shoving it in a box.
Yeah.
And I just wouldn't deal with it. And I remember one day I had a department head, another Enneagram 8, come into my office about 4 months after my dad passed away, and was like, so when are you going to get past this? Because you're not operating on, all cylinders like you were. When are you going to move on?
Super helpful delivery, by the way.
He's a changed person now, too, by the way, with all of the things we've been working on.
It's a good thing. He might have walked out with a knife in his face.
But for the first time in my life, I had experienced grief as an adult, and a person who was my mentor, my larger than life. And how was I going to get past this? Well, I'll just work harder, faster, and stronger.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You will check the boxes off. You absolutely will. I did. I got all the stuff done. I last summer, there was a song that came out by Taylor Swift called I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. And the first time I heard it, I had to pull the car over and I just started to sob, because I realized that's what I had been doing.
Yeah.
I am grinning while I'm winning.
Yep.
I'm going to hit all my marks. But, my heart is completely broken.
Yeah.
And learning that you have to deal with grief. You have to address the hard things. They don't go away.
Yeah.
They don't.
It's interesting as you're describing this. I'm picturing this box, you shove it in, you shove it deep, deep, deep down. And then we just start trying to concrete over it with these layers of achievement and success and
Absolutely.
tasks. And look what I'm doing despite this.
Yep.
And ultimately, every bit of that's got to be chipped away then. We're making it harder long term because we got to chip all that away and get to the core and unwrap that box and look at it and sit with it. And that's for your personality type specifically. That is the definition of brutal.
It was brutal. It was brutal because it was like, I don't understand. Why do I have concentration issues? Why am I having nights and nights and nights where I'm not sleeping?
Yeah.
Why am I having all these things happen? And I'm thinking it's physiological. And no, that's not what it is. It's grief. You wouldn't deal with it. And so now it's going to do other things to you.
Yeah.
Because you weren't dealing with the core of the matter. And I think, as a city manager, everybody's looking to me to be brave and to be, in my mind, perfect. Haha. And you can't help when you're full of grief, when you're hurting, when things are hard. I have 3 daughters in college. One just graduated last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, I still haven't dealt with the grief of my dad. And then all 3 of my kids start leaving.
Yeah. And
it was just too much.
Mm-hmm.
It was all these goodbyes and all these, one by one, everybody's leaving. And, what is my purpose and meaning now? Yes, I'm a city manager and I do that. I'm a mom and they're all going. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't deal with all that emotion either. And again, grief, not dealt with.
Yeah. Kids
leaving, not really truly dealing with. It just keeps stacking and stacking.
Yeah.
And that's when the physical effects start and you don't realize. And, you sort of have to retool and address that you are burned out.
Yeah. Well, and through that time, I think it's also, we think about that we're covering this up well, that we're hiding this well.
Oh, yeah.
And the reality is, the Enneagram 8 that came and confronted you, I probably know who it is.
Oh, yeah.
The one who came and confronted you is like, when are you going to get over this? That was their very blunt and probably not very diplomatic way of saying, hey, we're experiencing a version of you that is really hurting, that it's doing some damage. Not just we're not productive enough, we're not just checking enough tasks, but the interactions are not great.
Oh, yeah.
And when we suffer like that and we try to do it quietly and we don't tell anybody we're suffering, those sharp edges come out. And those sharp edges do us so much harm. And now people are going home more stressed out and more exhausted and more burned out because we are.
Yeah.
And that is a hard realization for most of us. And to me, I think we think about leadership as I'm going to stand in front, I'm going to take all the arrows, and I'm going to be the person to command and tell everybody how we're going to climb that mountain. Most of the actual work of leadership is us. It is, am I willing to deal with my own shit?
Yeah.
Am I willing to handle that so that now I can actually go lead in a courageous way? And that's the hard work.
It takes a lot of work.
It does.
And you have to really see parts of yourself that aren't very pretty.
Yes.
And accept that grief is not only emotional, it's physiological.
Yeah.
And that we really have to do the right things to take care of ourselves to make things happen. And when you're in your 20s or your 30s, even early 40s, you can ignore some of those good habits because you can get around them, right? Because you've got the energy and the strength, and now, I can tell you at 54, you can't just fake through it. Yeah. You can't. Yeah. You don't have that kind of stamina anymore. Mm-hmm. And yes, you have to be in bed by 9. I do. And I have to take better care of myself. I've got to get good sleep. I've got to eat better. I've got to take walks. I've got to do the things. And I am by no means perfect at any of that.
No.
My walking pad has a little dust on it right now at home in front of the TV. But I am trying to make those better decisions every day, saying to myself, you have a moment right now where you can make a good decision or an unhealthy decision. What is it going to be? Yeah. And some days I hit the mark and some days I don't. But again, it's going back to that personal best. It's not about perfection. Yeah. It's not about being like this person or that person. It's about how am I going to continue to improve myself?
Yeah. And I think it's easy to say, you got to take care of this stuff, right? You got to take care of your grief, and you got to take care of all the trauma we've dealt with in life and unpack those things. But I think a lot of people listening are like, how the hell do I do that? And so
Right.
I think, they always say step one is realize you have a problem.
Yeah. Amen.
And if you're listening and identifying with anything we're talking about here, you got a problem.
Absolutely.
And by the way, if you're human, you got a problem.
Yeah.
But I think step two, ultimately for all of us, I know it was for me, is we got to get somebody to help us. Like whether that's professional help or just friends or mentors or whatever. God, we need other people around us.
We do.
And I've noticed over the last couple of years, you've kind of been on this journey of really building out your circle.
Yes.
Like you are really interacting and a part of new groups and doing a lot of incredible work to both support others, but also find the support you need.
Yes.
How has that journey been for somebody who, we always talk about with Enneagram 8s, the work is to slow down, care for others, and lead with vulnerability.
Yes.
So the vulnerability to say, hey, I need some help. How has that gone so far? What have you discovered through that process?
That has been incredibly hard. I think one of the things that I have struggled with is not only just asking for help, but not saying things to myself like, well, they won't care. See, that is something I think my whole life I've struggled with friendships is they don't want to hear about this. I mean, I would pre-assume that. And one of the things someone said to me about a year ago that just completely changed my view of this was, why would you take that away from somebody? How dare you assume that I don't want to hear that? That's awfully arrogant of you to think you took an opportunity away from me to help you, to sit with you. Why would you do that to me? And I'm like, I didn't think about it like that. I didn't know that you would want to hear that. And I have allowed myself to talk to people about the things that are on my mind. It's still hard being vulnerable like that.
Never easy.
It's not. And I find that really my true vulnerability comes with people that aren't in the business necessarily. To talk about my personal issues and things that are going on. But I read an article that said, if you have 8 minutes with someone, that when you are having a time of trouble, that it will help trigger your brain to tell your brain it's going to be okay.
That's it.
So I have a best friend that we've known each other since we were 14, and we've been through it all. Marriages, divorces, children, really bad stuff, death, all the things. And she's an Enneagram 3. And so we both are hard chargers. And so sometimes we're just too busy when our phone's ringing, whatever. All we have to do is text each other 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's all it says. It says 8 minutes. You try to do whatever you can to stop what you're doing and give them 8 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard about that article, and that is a powerful concept that is so helpful. It's kind of like dialing 911.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I realize if I can just get it from here out, it's not going to linger and it's not going to fester and grow. Like at 3 o'clock in the morning, it has hair on it and teeth and it's really bad. But if you can just get it out, chances are you can start to move and not get stuck in paralysis.
You get different perspective because when the thing is right in front of us, it's big and it's scary. We reach out to somebody else who is not sitting in that chair, and we explain it to them, and they see it from a whole different perspective. They can help us see that. Go, oh, that's not actually big and scary. You're just really close to it.
Yeah.
And there's something about that ability to let go. And I think you've hit on something really interesting, which is I've been thinking about this lately, where we say no for people rather than letting them say yes or no.
Absolutely.
Like why would they want to hear me? Why would they want to do that? I see that in business all the time where it's like, well, I can never send them that estimate because there's no way they could afford that. Don't say no for them. Just send it. Let them say yes or no.
Right.
And it's kind of the same way with what we're talking about with mental health and with finding support. We think we're saying no for somebody and we're saving them from a whole hard conversation. In fact, we're robbing them.
Right.
And that is really powerful to understand. And I was doing this one day with an organization. We were talking about unreasonable expectations we take on. And one of the people there, they said that they had placed an unreasonable expectation on themselves. In the previous year, they'd had cancer and been diagnosed. They had 6 weeks of chemo and radiation, never missed a day of work, never said anything, never told their family, didn't want to upend anybody's life. And when they said this out loud, everybody sitting there listening just has tears in their eyes. And they're like, we want to support you. We want to show up and care and love. And that's where we have to, this is where the vulnerability, we're scared people are going to attack us. People are going to see us as weak.
Yes.
And every time I do it, it's still scary. I think I'm pretty vulnerable, pretty openly for a lot of people. It's still terrifying.
Yeah.
But every single time people show up and they serve and they love and they care. And that is, I there's so much power in that.
Oh, it's unbelievable when you can have an experience like that. You know, we talked about this yesterday. My dog died a little over 2 weeks ago. And, you know, she had become more and more of my companion as my girls were leaving.
Yeah.
And I had read somewhere that, you know, your pet that you become close to really is one of the children. It's just a child you never had. And Lucy was that constant for me. She's a 9-year-old, mean as a snake dachshund.
Yeah.
I mean, she's just, you know, she's something else. And barked at everybody, very few friends. You know, she didn't trust most people, but she loved me.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had a situation that day where I knew we were going to have to put her down. She had had a stroke 2 days before.
Yeah.
And it was my college daughter's last band concert. And I told my husband and my mother, I said, go ahead and go. And I told my husband, I said, why don't you give Lucy a big hug? And looked at him and okay. You know, we've talked about over the years when she goes, we have to respect each other's decision if we're the one that has to do it.
Yeah.
To be like, okay, I trust you that you're going to make the right decision. And my mom hugged her, but my mother didn't understand. I could tell. And I drove to the vet alone. And the vet, we went through all the things and she said, hey, we came to that conclusion. And I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and held her. And I called a friend. A year ago, I would not have done that.
Yeah.
I would have done it by myself. I called a friend who also has a weenie dog, so she understands. And I said, I'm going to have to put Lucy down. She said, send me a pin where you are. I'll be there. And she showed up 15 minutes later. And we laughed and we joked and we held her and, you know, and she sat with me in that awful, awful, uncomfortable, sad.
It's such an excruciating thing having to do that.
Awful. I've never done it. And she sat there with me and, you know, she has kind of an unruly sense of humor like I do. So we were laughing about ridiculous things and feeding the dog squirt cheese because they had that in there for dogs. You know, I was like, I didn't know my dog liked this. But, you know, feeding her
I love that you're
and
not supposed to give a dog cheese ever because it's bad for them. But in that situation, it's like, all right, let's do it. Let them have a treat.
Exactly. I mean, heck. Let her go out on a high note.
Absolutely.
And we just sat there.
By the way, if
I
ever end up on that table, I want to go out the same way. Just cheese, all right? Cheese and whiskey.
Exactly. Mine would be cheese and wine, but the same thing. And she sat with me in that. And as I absolutely unraveled.
Yeah.
And she just sat there and held me. And I will never forget that moment as long as I live.
Yeah.
And she said, you drove here by yourself. I said, just follow me home. I said, I'm going to call my brother, whose dog had just died back in January. I called him. He said, I'm on my way. I'm on my way to your house. And I'm like, what? We don't have that. I mean, I love my brother. It's not that, but I mean, he was like, I'm dropping everything.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, some of our other friends were there. My mom's there. My brother and his girlfriend brought dinner. I mean, it was a whole thing. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And we're all laughing and cutting up and telling stories about the dog. And then my mom starts telling stories about my brother and I. I'm like, how did it turn into this? But we were all just laughing and eating and, you know, and just, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And when you can let go and let people in your life, what a gift. What an incredible gift.
Yes.
And I've thought about it. Not a day has gone by since that day that I haven't thought about the beauty of just leaning into that uncomfortableness.
And every bit of it is like all humans, I don't care how tough you are. I was having this argument with the public works director the other day. We were talking about vulnerability and empathy and all these things. He's like, my guys will never buy into this. And I'm like, yeah, they won't as long as you don't.
Right.
And ultimately, I said, I'm betting on one truth. You guys are all created the same. every one of us as human beings wants to be loved.
Absolutely.
And every one of us wants to be accepted and heard and have human connection. And what you experienced, the beauty of that was sparked with a moment of vulnerability, with the ability to say, I need help right now. And we rob other people of the chance to serve us. We also rob ourselves of that connection and that love that we so desperately seek.
Absolutely.
But I think what happens is we try to hold on to what connection and love we have by appearing strong and appearing like because we think people love us for our strength. We think they love us for, I've got it all no matter what. And the longer I do this, the more I'm learning people love us because of who we are. And when we're vulnerable, they see more of us, which means they love us deeper.
And those are the people we want in our lives, because what I've found, and certainly look, as a city manager, there are people that I'm going to have relationships with, whether it's, as colleagues, whatever the case might be. And, that's great. And there are people, though, there are going to be a segment of those people that do value you for your strength. The city council in Sachse values me because I'm strong. That's why they want me in that position, right? I mean, that's why they want me there. But the ones that truly value me also value the fact that I care very deeply about the community and about our employees.
Yeah.
They see beyond that surface stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yes, people value 8s because we got it.
And
we got it together.
Things done.
We get it done. And we're not scared of nothing.
Yeah.
That's how we're wired.
Yeah.
But the people that really are in my life, they think, well, that's great. She's got it together. Yeah. But that's not why they really like me. That's not why they love me.
Yes.
It's not that.
Well,
it's
and I
the
think
other
there's,
things.
even in the professional side, I think it's defining what does strength actually mean. Is strength the ability to get things done no matter what, to push through, do all these things? And I think it's not an either or. It's not I'm vulnerable or I can be strong. I think the more vulnerable we are, when it's paired up with determination, that's where it starts to work, because it is vulnerable to say, man, I am really hurting right now. I am really struggling right now. And we're about to go get some things done. And we're going to go accomplish, and we're going to push forward. We're not going to stop.
I used to think those things were mutually exclusive.
That's it.
What
right
the
there.
journey has been in the last couple of years is you can be both.
Yes.
You can.
And I think it leads to actual strength. It leads to more productivity, because your dog is a great example. If you called nobody, if you suffered through that and you just stuffed it deep down, buried it in concrete, and let that dry, ultimately what that does is over the next weeks, months, years, you experience exactly what you did with your dad, where you are accomplishing things, but the how you get it done, doing some damage along the way. And so by being vulnerable, you heal faster, you move through this situation faster. Now you're able to get back to the healthy you that is able to really not only do things, but inspire people along the way. And that is I think there's more productivity to be found in vulnerability and healing, and strength to be found and shaped. I think it's kind of like a forging of a sword. Like with each hammer blow, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger and shapes the way it needs to. I'm really curious, because we always have this question, what advice would you give to somebody about to get into public service? I'm also curious, being that you are 10 years in, what advice would you give to the version of you that was about to be sworn in as city manager?
Oh, wow. She was a little naive. I think it's the theme that we've been talking about this whole time, which is I need to learn how to be kinder to myself and to give myself a break. And what I mean by that is, one of the things I've tried to teach my daughters is that about self-confidence. Girls struggle with that so much, and I certainly did growing up. And I think one of the things—
It's not exclusive to girls, I'll tell you that much.
Well, but society really
it does make it
a
harder.
number on girls with self-confidence, just because of what girls see in social media and all the things that go on with that. And one of the most amazing things my father did for me, and the biggest disservice, was he's like, you can do anything a guy can do. Get in there. Throw elbows. You got this. You're just as good as a man or better. And it taught me I could do anything. But what I didn't realize when I got out into the big world is not everybody agreed with my dad. And I had some things happen along the way. I was a little naive and didn't realize, it was going to be a little tougher road. But that I've taught my kids being a woman is a superpower. It's absolutely a superpower because we can do anything a man can do, but we can do it in a way that is consensus building, that is self-aware, that is understanding.
Yeah.
We have an ability to read a room really well. And that's what I tell young women that want to get into city management. I'm like, you have no idea what you bring to the table that is so unique and special and different.
Yeah.
And we need more of that. That's what we need. We need that in our business. And so, when you say, what would I tell my younger self? It's the other thing I say to my girls, which is, that thing you just said about yourself, what if your best friend said that about themselves? What would you say?
Yeah.
Well, it's terrible. You shouldn't say that. I'm like, then why should you say that about yourself?
Yeah.
And I think that's what I would have carried that mantra in myself better when I first became a city manager is don't be so hard on yourself. My gosh, those are some pretty terrible things you're saying, and this is a journey. This isn't all done in a day. And when grief hits, when sadness hits, address it and let it flow over you. And it's going to be awful. It's going to feel like the worst thing that's ever happened to you. But you can get past it. You will. And it'll hurt a little less every day. It will. When I think of my dad now, I don't cry all the time. Sometimes I do, but a lot of times it's happy tears, or I'm laughing about something usually. He had a very irreverent sense of humor, and he would do some things and now I just shake my head and laugh. And I love thinking about him instead of it feeling like a stabbing.
Yes.
He left an amazing legacy. Yeah. That's how I like to look at it now.
Yeah.
And when I feel that grief, I think about my dog. What a great 13 years we had.
Yeah.
All the fun times with the kids, dressing the dog up for Halloween. And, at Christmas, she hated wrapping paper being torn. And now when I hear, my daughter was unwrapping a graduation gift, and I just chuckled. And I was like, Lucy would be nose into the chair right now, like, it's paper tearing. It's trying to then take that sadness and turn it into all the wonderful things that we had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something you mentioned there was how we talk about ourselves. And we talked a little bit last night when we had dinner and talked about this idea of identity. And on my journey personally, at 45 years old, I think I finally, maybe around 41, 42, got a real look at who I actually am and began to really understand that deeply and really understand the power in that. But man, it took me every bit of 4 decades to get there, and
you got there faster than me.
but I just ran into different potholes, I think. but ultimately, that has genuinely transformed my life. And so, how do we help the younger generation find this sense of identity, of understanding who they are, and that who they are is amazing, who they are is capable, who they are is not broken. And in this research we're doing for this book, identity is everything. And I was I wrote down a question the other day that said, who are you when you're at your best? That's who we are. But everything else conspires, burnout and stress and everything else conspires to pull us off of that center of who we are. As you've kind of gone on this journey and you're in the middle of figuring all this out for yourself, like, what have you learned through that process? And are there things we can do to help others figure their identity out and stay aligned with that? I know that's a big question.
Well, I think one of the best things that happened to me was learning about the Enneagram. And if my kids do watch this, they're going to be like, "Oh, Mom, stop talking about the Enneagram." First of all,
the idea of your kids getting 51 minutes into this interview is, you've already told me how
right. It would be a miracle.
It would be a miracle.
It would be a miracle. But learning that, and as I like to call myself, a recovering Enneagram 8, is that there's no bad style.
Yeah.
Yeah. My assistant city manager, Lauren Rose, who's an amazing human being, amazing. If you don't know her, you should. Yes. I know you do,
And
Chad.
she has a great episode they should go listen to.
She does. she was so funny when she got her Enneagram. And of course, Enneagram 6s, they're worriers, worst case doomsdayers. She immediately goes to the worst and she's like, I could be on Skid Row. I'm like, stop reading Enneagram 1. I don't even, the lowest of health.
Yeah,
most
the
unhealthy,
lowest of health. Yeah.
The lowest one. And I'm like, stop doing that. I said, when you're healthy, I was like, Lauren, this is incredible.
Yeah.
You're an amazing person.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important ways to really start to embrace your identity is when you look at your Enneagram, looking at that healthy section.
Yes.
And seeing all the good. And what helps me with the team, and I'm looking at their Enneagrams, like when I have to have a hard conversation, and I told them this and they were shocked. I said, you do realize that when I know I'm about to have a hard conversation with you, I pull your Enneagram out and I look at your Clifton strengths.
Yeah.
And I start to think about how I'm going to have this conversation with you. I'm very intentional about that because there are wonderful things about every style. Now, when we're unhealthy, there's some not good things.
Yes.
There's not good things about all of us.
Yes.
But what I would encourage young people is look at those things that are great about yourself and enhance those.
Focus on that.
Yes, you have weaknesses. No doubt about it. Know them. Work on them. But focus on what you're good at and focus on where you are when you're super healthy. That's where you need to be. You'll build your confidence the older you get when you hone your strengths. And, because my girls will ask me this, and I've had young people that I've mentored that are like, well, how did you know when you're going to be good at this? Or how did you know that everything was going to be okay? Well, there's not some day that you're like, check, I'm all good now. It's focusing on these are the things I'm good at. And your confidence will build. When you love something and you're good at something, you're going to get better and better at it, and people will start to seek you out for that. So, but it's also, and sometimes in my organization, we struggle with this. I love that you know your Enneagram really well. I think that's great. But what I'd really like for you to do is pull out the Enneagram of the person you don't get along with. Yes. And why don't you look at that?
Let's figure out how these two types get along.
Because maybe you are an unhealthy version of yourself right now, and you are pushing all the buttons of this person. Yes. And so let's, leader know thyself, but leader know the team around you. Because I will say this, when I look at high-performing organizations, and I am competitive, obviously. That's how I got where I'm at in a lot of ways. But I will talk to friends in other cities that I think are the pinnacle. And, a glass of wine or two in, they'll say, man, we're not firing on all cylinders. Yeah. This person doesn't like this person, and I'm going, we all have the same problem.
Yes.
And I think that's where my team began to embrace all of this, is they understood if we're going to get to self-actualization, if we're going to get to really fulfilling all of the needs in this organization and be a high-performing organization, we have to figure out how to communicate with each other. And this isn't touchy-feely. This isn't emotional. This isn't, let's talk about our feelings. It's not kumbaya. This is, we cannot get things done unless we know how to interdepartmentally, cross-functionally work together. Because what you see in organizations is all the workarounds. So-and-so doesn't like so-and-so, so they only email, we do this, we do that. And when I have somebody come in my office and go, well, so-and-so did this again, I'm like, stop, sit down. What story are you telling yourself about this person? And how did you communicate with them? Go downstairs and talk to them, or go across the street and talk to them. What are you doing? Have a conversation.
It's funny if you could look at all those individual connections between people's like wires, and you step back and look at this organization, how it's all wired together. Anybody would come in and look at that externally and be like, what the hell are you guys doing? There's no way this is going to burn down eventually.
Right.
And it's cutting through that noise and saying, how do we learn how to do that?
Yeah.
That's a huge benefit for teams.
And that's where we're really when we're at our best.
Yes.
When we're at what I call high performance, it's when people are talking.
Yes.
And
it's willing to have the conversation.
And when we are working across the organization together, it's when we do really well.
Yeah.
And when we do that thing where we're telling a story about this person, or we don't like that, or whatever, that's when I see our productivity fall. And that's where I got a lot of buy-in from the team, even my grumblies, because they started.
I love your grumblies the best. They're my favorites.
They've started to see where the value is.
Yes.
And they see, oh, so if I just go down there and I just ask so-and-so, then maybe this might go a little better and we might actually accomplish what we need to accomplish. I'm like, I tell them all the time. I'm like, you are the smartest people in your respective specialties. Yet, why can't we solve this problem?
It's really funny because all we're talking about in this entire episode, this entire conversation, we've dove into grief and emotions and all these things that nobody wants to deal with. Everybody thinks it's soft and we're just wasting time on.
Right.
But it is in service of doing more of the sacred work we are tasked with doing. It is actually in service of more productivity, not less.
No.
But it is fighting through things that we are uncomfortable with. So we would rather just head down, do things the way we've done it, say, well, that's the best we can do. Yeah. And so that's where this is the hard work, is convincing people, no, this is about doing more, actually.
Yeah.
But long term, we got to back off just a little to get there.
And we're going to have to do some hard work.
Yes.
And it's going to get really uncomfortable. And we're going to have to say some things to each other that are going to feel really bad. And we're going to get scared that when we say it, it's going to make me look bad. It's going to make me look weak. It's going to make me look whatever my core fear is.
Yeah.
And how am I going to push past it? Because I know I'm in an organization that provides some psychological safety. I'm not going to be mad at you for feeling that way.
Yeah.
We've just got to use the right language with each other so we can do it in a way where it's productive.
Yes.
And it is not hurtful. And that I'm going to say this to you because I want to be better and I want us to be better, not because I'm saying anything bad about you.
Yeah.
And it's powerful stuff.
It is.
It really is.
The show is called Leading Thriving Cities, and the whole goal of this is our teams can thrive. What are some things that cities need to completely rethink that are keeping our teams from thriving, or things that can help them thrive in the future?
I always say that we're in the service business. That's what we do. We don't make cogs or widgets. It is all about our people. It's where we spend all of our money. It's where we put all of our effort. Whenever someone says, we need to cut the city's budget, I'm like, okay, so which people are we going to get rid of? Because what do you want me to turn the lights off? I mean, not buy paper. I mean, we don't spend much money on that other stuff. It's about people. And so that's our biggest investment. Shouldn't we invest in it? So shouldn't we be investing in these people? So when they come to work, it's a place they want to be, not when they turn the corner to get in the parking lot, their stomach hurts. Yeah. That's not what we want. We want people, it's like they say, happy life, happy wife, happy employee, happy residents. Yeah. It all goes down to that.
Yeah.
And if we really focus and concentrate our efforts on good benefits, competitive pay, and we care about our people truly.
Yeah.
So we pay them and we do all of those things like we should, but we spend the time on them. It pays dividends.
Yeah.
That we do things like, hey, every department head has EAP cards on their desk. We blow the national average on use of employee assistance programs. Yeah. The national average is 3%. We're almost 12%.
Nice.
Because we don't shy away from it. Because living in this world is hard. And we acknowledge it. And we say to our people, are you okay? Just that, as simple as that.
Yeah.
I do it with my folks all the time, and I expect them to do it all the way through the organization. We care about our people. And when I look at our stay chats that we do in our organization, sure, there are people that don't like this or that or the other thing. It's
always.
It's always.
Yeah.
But one of the things you will see universally in them, I love the people I work with. They're like family to me.
Yeah.
I love, what I'm around, what we're doing with this, what we're doing with that, with culture.
Yeah.
Culture's key. And if you care about your people and you truly invest in them the way you should, that's what cities need to do. That's what makes us different. Because we're not looking at the bottom line for profits. We're not looking at, we got to build more cogs and widgets this year. No, we need to invest in our people emotionally.
Yeah.
So they can go out and provide great service.
Yeah.
And I get compliments all the time about our employees. I don't know about how many city managers can say, but pretty regularly I get emails from residents thanking me for a police officer pulling them over and how professional and polite and kind that police officer was. I get them all the time.
Yeah.
I get compliments about our employees all the time.
So much of this path to thriving is going to require the realization that the people are the bottom line, that is for cities, that is it. And if we take care of that, the rest will fall into place.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, a ton of work.
But it's what makes, I believe, what makes my organization special. And I think others can be too.
Yeah.
By making that investment. And it doesn't really cost money, but it takes time.
It takes time. It takes the willingness to ask the question, how are you doing? I think there's a lot of fear around asking that because we feel like if we ask the question, whatever they say, we got to fix.
Right.
We can't. Sometimes we're just directing them to outside resources. Sometimes we're just listening. We're giving them 8 minutes, right? Yep. But it's being willing to ask that, knowing I don't have to have all the answers. I just need to see the next step. I mean, you've been with me in coaching 1,000 times. I don't think I know that much. I just ask questions and I point people to therapy. Those are my 2 moves, and it works. And so, but it's the courage to take time out of a crazy schedule, because we've talked schedule a lot, and say, hey, how are you doing? Like, it seems like something's off and I care about you.
Yeah.
That's a powerful conversation. Again, if at our core we want to be supported, heard, and loved, if we can provide that, that creates that culture where Sunday morning at noon, their mind is already shifting and going, I get to go to work tomorrow.
Right. It's not the Sunday scaries.
Yes.
I don't want that. Exactly. I want people to want to do what they're doing, to work with the people they're working with, to do the things they're doing, and feel like they're part of something beyond themselves. That's more important. And I mean, I'm, like I've said before, I'm blessed to be in the community I'm in, to have the support of the city council I have. I have an incredible team, and we've come a long way. We have done some wonderful projects, check all the boxes, but I've seen a difference in who they are as people. And how they lead. And to me, that's what matters.
That's it. That's the whole ball game. I love it. Gina, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Chad. I'm glad we were finally able to do it.
The best conversation.
It was great.
Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you for joining us for Leading Thriving Cities. If you'd like to find out more about what we do at Forward Partners, you can find us at www.forwardpartners.net. We love partnering with cities to learn how to develop healthy leaders and thriving teams. We do that through a variety of means, from leadership coaching to online courses to facilitating retreats. If you ever need anything, please feel free to reach out. You can also find us online with all the different socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We are putting out content all the time, and you can find it at Forward Partner.